あ、ここいるんだ。
本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's April 7th, 2023, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 556. I am your host, Rob Zachney, and I'm joined by Patrick Klepek.
Hello, I gotta turn off this heater. Keep going.
And our producer, Ricardo Contreras.
It's gonna hit 75 today in New York.
Yeah, I think you have the heat that we got earlier this week. We had a 77 day, and then, don't worry, it's back down to
50, yeah.
See, I wish I could be more excited about like the 77 degree day, except that like that means it's gonna be like 82 inside my building like immediately.
No.
So it is the like it's nice outside, but where you end up having to spend a lot of your day to work, it's immediately like, well, I don't know how to control this temperature. So I'm just going to sit here and be sweltering. Anyway, Patrick, I want to jump right into this because I saw people chatting about this the other day, and I'm eager to know more and get into this. Having had that big discussion about the questionable fate of PSVR 2, how that's going, another kind of fizzling, peripheral project by Sony. There's a rumor going around that Sony wants to touch that hot stove again with another peripheral device.
Yeah, there's a report out of Insider Gaming, Tom Henderson, who has been pretty reliable on things, especially related to, I believe, Call of Duty. I can't necessarily speak to the track record on Sony hardware announcements, nor can I speak to this authoritatively personally, based on people I've spoken with. But, it has been backed up by Giant Bomb's Jeff Grubb, who has sort of corroborated this broader idea that Sony is working on some sort of new handheld, and the sort of collective sort of agreed rumors, reports, however you want to categorize them, is that it is not something that would be a Vita 2 or a new PSP, but is in fact kind of following a trend that we are seeing in the wake of things like the Steam Deck, which is a either cloud or remote play focused device. Like currently you can, from your phone or your iPad or from your computer, you can play a game that is on your PlayStation 4, 5. I don't know if that goes as far back as PlayStation 3. It must, I guess, if the PSP probably had some of that stuff. But it is, not new to PlayStation, but it would be new for them to be launching a handheld focused on the idea of, hey, do you want to play your PlayStation game somewhere other than in your office or in your living room? And you don't want to buy, what's the one that's really good? There's a couple of these that like glom onto your phone. The Backbone is like the collectively. I've used it. It's excellent. I used it to play a number of like visual novel and slower focused games on my phone. It kind of just like gloms onto your device and gives you a native interface and to kind of get around and kind of play these things streamed from your localized device. And we've seen a bunch of there have been like actual Steam Deck imitators, but then there also have been ones that are just, hey, there are a lot of these cloud services. This is just a little display with decent feeling controls that are going to tap into GeForce Now and Xbox streaming and etc. So this would kind of follow in line with that device and not necessarily be another device that Nintendo or Sony would have to produce more games for, which would probably be an error because that was a huge thing that ended up impacting the Vita quite a bit.
Now, the idea, of course, is this is going to tie on to the PS5. And, this is something I've lost track of. But obviously, it's been a very successful console, consistently, selling out. But anytime I hear, you're limiting the potential pool of customers to people who already own this really expensive piece of hardware, I immediately started to wonder, is that a great idea? Right now, obviously, it's a different situation with the PSVR 2 because, it is an equally expensive piece of hardware that they're trying to sell that has, maybe more fairly limited use cases and a limited slate of games, and it does depend on that. But I do kind of wonder, if this is, primarily going to be selling itself on the strength of, the PS5 and what it can, like, how it can help you, like, change your relationship to it. Like, I kind of, like, does that make sense at this point? Have the sales been good enough that you're talking about, like, probably a huge potential pool of customers that would legitimately shell out for something like this?
Well, I think that a different way of looking at it is, and this would actually, we don't know what Sony's internal expectations are for the PSVR 2, right? And so even though it's very easy to frame the projected sales of the PSVR 2 that we talked on the previous podcast as seeming disappointing relative to what might seem like a, I don't know, pulled out of your ass impressive number. If you look at the PSVR 2, if we assume that this device is real, no, it would not be necessarily, like, it is soft capped by how many PS5s have been sold, right? Like, you are not selling this to people who are not existing PlayStation owners, but there are other companies, like, look at an Apple. And now this is at a scale that is much bigger than what the PlayStation 5 would be, but there is a healthy industry, a healthy market in selling expensive add-ons to an ecosystem that you are already invested in. And there is definitely would be a through line between, hey, you like your PlayStation 5, do you want to do more things with it? Okay, well, we've got this VR headset. Oh, would you like to enjoy this PS5 somewhere else in your house in a really easy way and not have to deal with your phone and you forgot to charge the battery? Like, it's easy to see that pitch, and then it doesn't have to sell tens of millions of copies. It's just, my guess is a piece of plastic that has a good Wi-Fi and sell, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to downplay like that it's like cost $5 to produce, but it's much different to produce a device that is running things natively than it is just being a servicing platform for the host machine, which is the PS5, right? Like, that's one of the downsides of the PSVR is that it doesn't have any onboard computing, right? That is not how that handle the Quest or other wireless devices work. Like, the games run natively on the headset. The PSVR relies on the PS5. In this case, it would be relying on the PlayStation 5, unless they untether that to some degree to a broader cloud output, in which you would just have to be on your local network, and you could, or any network, and you could be playing games. It's easy to imagine them broadening that out, but it's also easy to imagine looking at the PSVR 2 that, look, they just want to lock you further in to this specific ecosystem. And hey, look, the prices are being driven down awfully fast on producing a little device like this.
I was curious if there was any specific. Did they say that it's only PS5 like remote playable? Because in theory, you could probably still do that to a PS4 too, and that's a much larger install base already.
At least according to the Insider Gaming report, which I can read from, says, codenamed the Q Lite, the next PlayStation handheld is the next piece of Sony hardware that aims to be yet another piece of hardware that requires the PlayStation 5. Insider Gaming understands that the Q Lite is not a cloud streaming device, but instead uses remote play with the PlayStation 5, a feature the console giant's been pushing these past couple of weeks. As far as the console's physical features, early prototypes show the console will look a lot like a PlayStation 5 controller, but with a massive 8-inch LCD touchscreen in the center. The device sports adaptive triggers for haptic feedback and will include what you expect from a handheld: volume buttons, speakers, an audio input jack, etc. The reason I would suspect that it would latch itself to the PS5 is because Sony made a bet that was boosted by COVID and supply chain issues, which was, hey, we're going to do a bridge. We're going to have games running on PS4 and PS5, and that's going to happen probably longer than they expected because of the way COVID impacted, especially like big budget game development. But you can start to see not just hints, but explicit moves away from a new God of War running on PS4 and PS5. Horizon Forbidden West, its DLC, Burning Skies or something along those lines, is coming out very soon, and that does not run on PlayStation 4. That is a PlayStation 5 exclusive DLC for a game that ran on both platforms. And there have been reports from a number of folks like Jeff Grubb and kind of folks in that orbit have been suggesting that Sony is preparing to do something of a like, hey, what is the second act of the PlayStation 5? Like, there are going to be some like big announcements, and you could imagine things like this being tied to it as like, hey, you loved your PlayStation 5. You can finally go buy a PlayStation. Your friends can buy a PlayStation 5. You don't have to hang out in a Discord channel in order to get one. But what else can you do with this thing? Because they have been devices, and this is true with the Xbox and the PlayStation, that, have had some good games, but I don't know if they've truly felt like next generation devices, that's a tough bar to hit, as like technology has just reached a point where we're just not having those same sorts of leaps. But I do think we are finally getting in a position with the Starfields of the world, with I imagine Spider-Man 2, which is supposed to be coming out this fall. The games are going to start really taking advantage of that hardware to some degree, and I can imagine hardware announcements like this being like, and here's how everything orbits around it.
So, how many fake AI renders of this hardware do we think we can look forward to over the coming months as people try to do one fake leak after another?
Can they do that? I haven't, because you're right. Like, so in the past, there have been the famous artist renditions, right, where you get you get like an artist to take a description, or maybe something is taken off the supply chain, like a model, and that is turned into something. I don't know. I have not seen. This could be new. Like Waypoint decides to get controversial, and we are partnering with Midjourney to produce.
No.
Show me the Q light.
It's not just that though. It's just something on my mind because a very good poster who works in like design and product design and UX, Chapel Ellison, like posted last week about how much harder she suspects doing historical design research is about to become, because now so often the keywords you would use to search like consumer product devices from, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, you will find littered in there fake products that is someone's like AI rendering project. And so like now you have to look much harder at figuring out what is legit out there. And
I just imagine it tells like what is like, because like, what is the thing that a lot of the AI they have trouble with, like fingers, right, and mouths, like that is like the tell. Like what is the equivalent tell?
They figured out the fingers.
They did?
Yeah.
The teeth? Is the teeth still a problem?
I think I'm not 100% sure on the teeth, but I know someone has showed me a picture. It's like they figured it out. They did it. They did the fingers finally.
Damn. All right.
Take another one off the list. Gone. This
apparently, like, it still is reasonably easy to, if you work in the space and you're like a professional, it's still kind of easy to tell certain like qualities of a render, especially an AI render versus like product photography. But for the layperson, there's certain, like, I've seen some examples that I'm like, if you told me that, like, yeah, this is a radio from the 40s, I'd be like, damn, they had radios like that? That's awesome. And it's just not real.
So many people wanted to believe that the Pope was fucking swaggy. Like,
yes.
Yeah, I feel like that was a real inflection point.
God.
Was like, what are the, like I said, the good enough inflection point,
right,
where
right.
It's enough to produce a cultural moment, regardless of whether or not it's true. And it's all for fun, right? Like, because especially like, I don't know, the Pope, that Pope specifically, like, has been seen like wearing some weird, like, it was within the realm of possibility that, like, sure, I don't know, why not? And also there's a certain amount of like just kind of disbelief that goes along with it. Like, I don't care if it's real, like, it's funny. It's like exists along that meme spectrum.
There's just enough. I feel like there's just enough like acceptance of certain like digital artifacting in, like, phones, phone cameras aren't great, or like even just like, oh, that file has been copied enough times that I see the like compression artifacting start to happen on the internet, that like high quality, like, it doesn't need to be super high quality to be convincing, right? Like, actually, if it's a little shittier looking, it's a little more convincing, which is kind of terrifying, because like it's just like you don't even have to try that hard, or like,
that looks like what an underfunded archival institution would like post as like, we took photos and we saved on the pixels. We didn't want to give you the full the full Monty. So I'm like, I'm curious to see what the device ends up being. And to be fair, like, when MK and I were having our brief war over PS5 rights, when she was just like drinking deeply of Elden Ring, the remote stuff just to a computer desktop from the PS5 was really, really impressive.
Well, you were in the room, right? Like, you were as close. So my history with it, like, if you are, not obstructed by walls. You have like essentially a line of sight with the device. It does pretty amazing things, even for games that would require, some level of, like maybe not quite a fighting game, but right, like you could probably get away with an Elden Ring or something like that if you are like in a space. Like, it gets trickier. Like houses and apartments are crapshoots on like what has been built here. Like, what are these walls made of? Like, what, like, how is your Wi-Fi between walls is going to give you a good sense of how are these remote play devices. Like, they're not any more special, right? Like, there are times where I have, despite the fact that I could remote play my Xbox, I have done the cloud-based stuff instead because it is better for me to just connect to a cloud instance than it is to connect to the goddamn Xbox that's a floor below, because certain times of the day, it's hard to tell. Like, there are times where it's worked. It works the best, frankly, and I guess to me this is not surprising, when my entire family is asleep, when like the internet is just quieter. And I don't know if that is related to a Comcast thing, plus like devices in the house are a little bit, I have no idea, but like at like 11 o'clock on the couch, I could be upstairs and it would beam just fine. But like on a Saturday at 2 o'clock, sometimes I would have issues where like this isn't even worth bothering with. And so I don't know how much a dedicated device would improve that. My guess is not much. I think that is going to be much more tightly wound to your individual circumstances, but I bet it feels better than even a backbone or any of these things that, go on to your phone or tablet.
Patrick, I think you should become a thermostat dad for internet usage.
Yeah.
I think weekend morning, just imagine, and the stories your kids will tell about you in years to come, where but just like, it's a weekend morning and you just come downstairs and being like, look at the speeds I'm getting on my PlayStation handheld. I need all of you off the internet. This is daddy's work time.
I gave up the thermostat thing with the second kid. I was hey, this can be 60, like in the winter and stuff like that. It's like can be 68 during the day, and then we're going to try and bring it down to like 66, 65. And then there was just at some point I saw my wife just manually going and changing it. It's like I'm not going to do this quiet war
like
anymore.
Like little elf.
The money that I am saving is not worth the quiet war I am engaging with my wife in over our second child. And so I can just stay at 68 during the winter, and then we'll switch it when it gets warm in the spring and summer. And
I guess you don't want a bigger house in 50 years.
I'm curious whether or not this they're hoping to go like the full remote route. I feel like I can see this working in a place that's far further integrated than the United States, at least, right? Like, I mean, they're based in Japan. That makes sense. There's more broadband available more widely there. But I feel like it might lose a little bit of like its like selling point here, where like you either have to have a device that has like its own cell plan, which, like that's what Apple's basically done with the iPad, right? It's like you can get a cell plan specifically for your iPad, so you are always connected and able to use it wherever you want, which could be a route to go. Or just like, you kind of in certain
they tried with the Vita, right? The Vita was famously laughed at, and I was there when it occurred, when they announced, their partnership with AT&T, which everyone groaned over because they I don't know. I think I know the Steam Deck is a portable, but I don't know what the stats are. I know what my stats are, which is that it broadly stays in my house. It is what it is a device to make gaming more convenient in the place that I already live. Right. And so it would not shock. I mean, I'm sure whenever promo video they pitch for this will have people on a rooftop, like, let's play Destiny. You know what I mean? But like, I'm imagining the biggest use case for this is just, hey, like, you have a PS5 already in one room. You shouldn't have to, do what I'm doing now, which is like lug it between, upstairs and downstairs. Like, this device takes care of it for you. Like, you can just flip this on, and if you're just trying to log in to play with your friends, spend an hour in Diablo, like, you can just do that on the couch. And so I don't know if it'll have a cell plan. I think that's an open, because that makes the device more expensive to put a cell chip in it. And I don't know how many, between the ubiquity of Wi-Fi at whatever coffee shop you go to, between
but is
you
that
have a cell phone.
Wi-Fi?
If you just want to tether it to your cell phone if you really need it wherever you're going.
Sure. I mean, just like the fact that there are fewer and fewer, if any, plans left that are unlimited. I feel like that's going to be a huge data suck, and that might be like
it's fair.
The actual limiting factor, where like a specific plan just for that maybe was unlimited data. Like maybe they figure out a special deal or some shit.
Well, I mean, and that's why I think the cell part stuff may not be
right.
like critical to its pitch, because it just adds another thing to the device. Or maybe you sell one that has it and doesn't, right? I think that's what I believe that's how the Vita worked, right? Like there was that one. Did it have a cell enabled one and a not? I can't remember, but like that's how the iPads are sold, right?
Yeah,
like where there is a cell chip in one and not in the other, and they're slightly But at that point, like, do you really need to be producing two? I just don't think. I think the use case of using 5G or whatever to stream a game from a PS5 is like
5G fucking
fake
numbers.
I do get it occasionally. I can't tell a goddamn difference.
No,
like,
I think sometimes it works worse, honestly.
Well, it is because 5G operates. There's like two kinds of 5G, right? Like there's the ones that go through buildings, and then there's the one that is like I'm bungling the technical, but like one is faster and one is slower. The one that penetrates more is slower. And like it's not.
It's so I think my understanding about the 5G thing is 5G is this really complicated mesh of different unused frequencies that or controversially, they were being used by like weather satellites and weather radars. But so like there's kind of like real and fake 5G in places where it's like been fully implemented. But like there's a section of bandwidth where I think they like call it 5G effectively, but at that point you're just like it's just a normal section of bandwidth, same as like any other cell phone plan. But where you get the full thing in place, it's able to sort of frequency hop like crazy, to be hyper efficient, going to like small slices of the spectrum to find like faster speeds. So like that's kind of what I think my understanding of like how 5G is working is. It's just like a massively sophisticated like almost like traffic cop like solution to wireless broadband. But like the nature of some of these frequencies is also that they have different ranges. And so, there's going to be places where it's not implemented as well. It is like, but it is apparently pretty transformative, but I don't think I've encountered like the real deal either. Well, no, that's not true.
Well, also, what are you going to use? I mean, that's at a certain point for what I use a phone outside of my house for. There are very few use cases in which I need to be able to download multiple terabytes of data like at a fast speed.
Just wait until the fall when the bears are good.
I need a stream.
I need my speed.
I need that non-existent 4K stream coming.
Yeah, if you're gonna mirror it up into I don't know, the local shop's big widescreen.
That's true. I'm gonna need all the bandwidth when when I install that TV next to my inflatable hot tub outside of my patio.
God,
that's true.
Dream.
Wow.
I already know the spot that it's gonna get drilled into. So it's gonna. Sunday night, Monday Night Football is about to be transformed.
Oh my God.
Transformed. Now, granted, it's transformed for about 15-20 minutes before it gets like too hot and you need to get out. But like for that 15-20 minutes during that opening kickoff, you're gonna. Baby, I am ready for Sunday night.
You could do that, like as the weather gets colder. You could be doing the whole like, a little like Patrick Klepper take on like the, I guess which is the bathing tradition that does the hot and then cold and then hot? Is that like more Scandinavian or is that Turkish? But
don't know, but it is delightful.
Yeah, you could be doing this hot tub is getting a little warm. Time to go stand in the like cold, freezing air for like for a series, and then hop back in and have more to drink.
And that'll become part of my like my paranoid ritual with the Bears. It's like when they're on defense, like I gotta be out in the cold. It's bear weather, Rob. Like I need to be like the bear. And then the offense is heating up. Time to get back in that hot tub and have a sip of this drink. So I think we've worked.
And then every time the stream stutters, you'd be like, "Who's using the internet?"
Jessica, turn off that fucking Roblox.
Oh my God.
speaking of criminal investigations, Patrick, tell me about this murder of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes, the murder of one Sonic the Hedgehog by one. I just wanted to note, I have not played this, but the social media manager.
I'm gonna play it.
You're gonna play. You should because I want you to come back and report back about it. But the social media manager for the Sonic brand tweeted out just recently that over 1 million people had downloaded The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. It's currently the number 61 highest rated game on Steam of all time, and it was a visual novel murder mystery that was released on April 1st. And what I think is worth noting is because I've seen this sentiment come up multiple years, it has become incredibly common to the point of exploitative cynicism that on April 1st, there will be a game company that announces a visual novel, often one with a romance and straight up horniness, saying what if we made a visual novel about this franchise that people love? And everyone goes, we'd love it. This is a huge demographic. And these games are incredibly popular. And these are produced as April Fool's bits, that essentially make fun of the genre as a April Fool's sort of gag. And I think what was interesting about this Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, while not like a romance visual novel sort of thing, although I think they did that same exact thing. I think they released the Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog and then also had a sexy visual novel sort of bit. And this is where I had started thinking about this broader trend in games and social media stuff that happens around April 1st. You have an example here of a company spending real resources making something that, I read the Polygon review and they were like, this is pretty fun, well written, it's a real thing. And how many times have we all watched an April Fool's bit that hey, actually, I think if you just made this would be a good, I think people would like this and it'd be a good idea. But there's something hyper specific, and I've just gotten tired of the trend of specifically hey, we've made a visual novel and the horny visual novel out of a popular IP as a way of sort of broadly making fun of what is otherwise an extremely popular genre. Yeah. And I just thought it was notable and neat here that, look, they actually did the thing. They made it. They spent real time on it. It, I believe, is free, so it's not as though they're making bank on it, but it is well liked. It's good for the quote brand, and people are having fun. And that's, more in the spirit of what I'd like to see out of an April 1st than dunking on a increasingly popular genre that may is well liked by millions of people.
Yeah. And also, increasingly, doesn't it kind of feel like it's the traditional Sonic games that people resonate the most with? We're making a classic Sonic game. This sucks. This ain't classic Sonic. This is shit. We made a little racing game with Sonic, classic with genre. Secretly the best kart racer in 50 years, basically before they started making them. But who cares?
Gosh, it's almost like the Sonic franchise was cursed and bad from the start, and everything they've just done out of the cool design has been better than the original games.
Look, people liked Sonic Mania, which was, classic.
It was well made. That was the Sonic Mania, where they actually worked with fans in the Sonic community to build out a game that was close to those classics, as opposed to the disaster that was Sonic 4. And again, I am not someone that even making fun of Sonic game. They've never been my thing. But if you're gonna do it right. And that was an example of them doing it right. And just make the game that people want to play, not the episodic Sonic 4 games that nobody liked.
I mean, and there's also obviously at this point, the community really enjoys these characters, and so what you've got here is a way of interacting with those characters specifically, much more, there's much more than the main games, even, right?
Part of what has kept Sonic alive during the period in which it had games that people convinced themselves they liked over a large spectrum of games that just, where the Sonic cycle was invented was
Colors was okay.
The excellent, exactly. Kato, come on. You're just being a character now. But things like the Archie comics,
Yes,
like
the comics,
the comics or the cartoon series, like that is the stuff that like really expanded like and maintained like the franchise during periods where the games were just Sega was unable to sort of make anything worthwhile, or at least on a consistent basis. Like post Sonic Adventure, I feel like post Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 is when they just
the Dark
didn't
Ages.
really know what to do with it anymore. And then you occasionally got like a Sonic Color, so it's like, oh, like this one's all right.
Yeah,
it's like, oh no, I can't do that, and I don't know how to do that again. That was just an accident. And so I don't know, like. They seem to have a better handle on it than they have had in the past. And like, I haven't seen both of those movies, but they seem fine. And also,
first one's all right.
Within the tone of the franchise. And so I don't know, like this is a neat extension of that. And I wish more companies would look at what's happening here and just sort of, I don't know, like don't taunt and make fun of your fans.
Right.
Like maybe
Also
just embrace the thing that they want.
Also make these for real. I mean, I know the developers who made this, obviously because they work for Sega, got paid, but there's something about making this only as a joke and making it free that kind of still, like, it doesn't quite, like, make fun of as much as like the other kind of jokey ones were, but it still is like a little bit of like, but it's still not real, right? Like, it's still not something where
I can imagine, like, how do I get the resource allocation with this within this big company for something that doesn't map on, like when you're looking at like the Sonic franchise, it's like we're gonna do a game called The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, well, the way you push that rock through the corporate
is that it has
like
to be
hill
on April 1st.
Is it's on April Fools?
Yeah,
it's for free. It's like for but maybe
look,
hopefully
it's got 11,000 positive reviews currently on Steam. Like. Overwhelmingly positive reviews. Maybe
you would hope that
enough.
this is evidence, right? That allows them to do exactly what you're talking about. It's like, hey, what if we actually let people like spend a year actually building something like this, whether it's in Sonic or some other franchise? Like that's how that stuff. Hopefully, like hey, someone had, Sonic had to take the first step. Like who's going to take who's going to take the second?
All right. Well, we will contemplate that while we take a break, and after that, we will talk about some games we've been playing. Back after this. And we're back. And remember, Waypoint Plus listeners got this podcast ad-free. You can learn more at waypointplus.com and see how you could have filled that break with nothing but cool tunes. At least I think it's waypointplus.com. Who knows what's happening to our various URLs?
We're working on it. We're working on it.
That one still works. That one still works.
Thank God. Waypoint Plus, standing strong. So, Patrick... video games.
You don't want to talk about the 1997 film Steel? Have you ever seen that Shaq classic?
No.
No? Okay.
Well, did you see Kazam though?
Which one? Kazam's the real one. Kazam's the one.
Kazam's the real, not the one with Sinbad that everyone fucking memory palaced and like everyone.
Here's the weird thing. I've often felt like actually the whole Sinbad made that like I never had that delusion until people wouldn't shut the fuck up about it, and then I just forgot what to me it's not an interesting one because clearly what people were remembering was Shaq is a genie. We all remember that movie. It was just like people figured they must have gotten a popular comedian to go do it. And it's like no, it was a Shaq movie.
There was something.
I mean, Sinbad was also extremely popular.
Yeah.
At the time, was in a lot of things. Like, it would not have been out of pocket for him to have been cast in that film.
One could argue it would have made more sense. Especially early Shaq film roles.
Right. That was the what was that movie with he was like the fucking bodyguard to the president's kid or whatever. That was that time, right?
Shaq?
No, Sinbad.
No, I think you're right. I think there is a movie where Shaq is guarding the president's kid. It's called
First Kid.
Lacedaemonian. That's what it is. Yeah. It's a little David Mamet joke for people.
Wow.
For people following along at home.
There was apparently some sort of Sinbad thing where he was wearing a turban, but it was like an ad or some shit, and people would just like. I don't.
The director of The Exorcist directed Blue Chips? What?
Excuse me.
Like The Exorcist? Like original?
William Friedkin directed Blue Chips, the 1994 American sports drama.
Yeah.
Directed by William Friedkin, starring Nick Nolte as a college coach trying to recruit a winning team. His players were portrayed by actors as well as real-life basketball stars Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway.
Wow.
Sorry, I was looking through Shaq's filmography as a result of this conversation. It was like, I've heard of Blue Chips, never seen it. I was like, William Friedkin? Like, I mean, sure, he had an eclectic filmography. He was not a horror director, but anyway. Sorry, I've completely derailed this at this point. Now it's very clear that Rob, based on his face, is also looking at a Wikipedia entry. I just can't tell if it's Blue Chips or...
No, actually, I was looking at... I was trying to remember the name of the Kevin Durant kids movie. Thunderstruck, in case you're wondering.
No, I wasn't, and I've never heard of it.
I feel like we all lost out on a career of Shaq as like a comedic actor, because honestly, his performance in whatever that NBA game was spectacular.
I mean, we could say he is performing comedy every episode of Inside the NBA.
Look, we have pushed Waypoint Plus pretty far, but have we pushed it far enough? Welcome to the Shaq Cast. We're going through the entire filmography of one Shaquille O'Neal from 1994's Blue Chips to 2020's Hubie Halloween. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 episodes on the docket for you. Many of these cameos: Scary Movie 4, The House Bunny, Jack and Jill.
This is
but he also shows up in Snow Dogs.
Do we do cameos or only starring roles?
It might that might be a single episode. Yeah. So I think Freddie got fingered after the Sunset Scary Movie 4, The House Bunny, and Jack and Jill, which is a sequence of movies from 2001 to 2011 in which he only appeared in cameo form. That could be a one episode thing, and then we're getting down to like 14 tight episodes about Shaq's film. You joke, but the people would listen, Rob. They listen to us talk about baseball, and most of them don't watch sports. Anyways, that should have been our April Fool's joke. A Shaq Cast. Fuck
the Shaq Cast.
Oh, that would have been good. I just played it straight. May 1st.
I guess, but on the subject of sports, Patrick, you had listed here MLB The Show.
Yeah.
Is this you just dancing on my grave some more?
No. People can watch the stream and watch us. No, I thought I know that you talked about MLB The Show with Kato on the podcast last week, but I have not played a baseball game since. I mean, what was there beyond it before MLB The Show became the de facto Madden? Less so because of licensing, more so because it was just the best, right? Like, isn't that the arc of baseball's
I believe like MLB The Show ran like RBI off the field. It might have been, or maybe I feel like there was another baseball series going at the same time, and then MLB The Show just was like
just better,
the better one. Yeah,
right. And so I don't know when the last time I seriously sat down and played a baseball game was. Baseball's also lower ranked for me in terms of the sports that I have vested interest in or want to like engage with, like in a gaming format. So it was just interesting to come back to it and play it with you and just see the layer of complexity. Like, I'm sure I was the last MLB The Show or equivalent that I played. There were certainly layers of complexity, but the natural arc of any of these games over time seems to be, by necessity, systems on tops of systems on tops of systems. It does not prevent them from becoming popular, but it does make it incredibly overwhelmed. Like, I know how baseball works. I also know how football works. And I think we've shared the sentiment of like, anytime you return to a Madden, it's like, holy shit, there's like 9 buttons just to like throw the ball. And then there are like a billion things that are happening once I've caught it.
Yeah.
And the people who play these games and enjoy them, well, I don't know if they're happy with the Madden games. That seems to be actually just corporate dominance as opposed to necessarily winning the argument
if there were
through
a
sheer
viable
quality of
alternative to
play.
Madden, people would be off like a shot.
Well, that's what Visual Concepts was doing for ages, right? Like with the NFL 2K series, right? Which was the Sega produced stuff for a while. Those were well regarded football games. So I don't know. Like maybe you touched on this, and we can just move past this if you touched on this in the podcast last week. But the arc of complexity of this series, like, do you have any sense of it? Because I know you've played more of it than I have.
No, I don't think so. Because the first one I got seriously into was, I was high off that Cubs World Series. And so 2017, I was like, hell yes, I'm going to play MLB The Show.
The dynasty has begun.
But by that point, it really hardened into a pretty consistent design. Now, having said that, here's the odd thing. They changed the name of certain options in the menu this year, but like the version I came in on, MLB 16, the show 17, like these are identified as like legacy control setup. So it has evolved, but it doesn't, like, to me, it is not particularly noticeable. I think the big thing is, and you sort of came across this, they have tried to make it a lot like golf games, right? They're always playing around with control interfaces to try to get like the right feel of how the various actions in the sport should come across.
Well, how do you create a sensation beyond hitting a button, which is here, right? Like the more simplified hitting that like I was literally ran away with in the first inning of our matchup was the arcadey style of timing based. It's like you're not worried about where the pitch is landing. You are just trying to connect whatever swing motion, whether it's, I forget what it would be like an older game, but in the new game, it's power where you're like, hey, I'm slugging this. I want this to be a home run. It's normal, which is just hit the ball, and then contact, which is, I don't know, you just want to maybe get on base. And you're not worried about anything except when ball crosses plate, hit button, and the game will take care of where that appears in like to the hitter. It doesn't matter if it's in the upper right or the bottom left. Like the direction of the pitch is irrelevant. You are just hitting that timing, which is way less specificity than you're getting everywhere else with the more advanced control techniques.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think that's where you really see the effective years going by, is they've sort of revisited what's a better interface, but we don't want to alienate the people who maybe prefer these simpler versions, or maybe just prefer these old schemes that we were using. So it all kind of ends up in there. But I do think like it is just it's a simpler game from the standpoint of like, what are you asking a player to do? When you're hitting, you're just kind of hitting. Madden, as you alluded to, has almost like fighting game levels of controls, because every position is really contextual, right? Like the minute they introduced, like, here are 4 different ways to bring down a pass if you're a receiver. And each of those has an impact of like what your follow through on that is. It will affect like, what sort of jump you get, when you take off running. But it does mean that every single thing that happens in a Madden game, you potentially have to adjust your notion of what you're doing on the controls like at least twice per play as it goes along. And it's really, there's a lot of like nuance in things you can make your player do. There's a lot of expression of like their physical prowess. Here it's much more like, it's select your hit, and then beyond that it is questions of fielding. Pitcher probably has the most nuance, but even there it's more like, your selection of pitches is basically, your hand, and you're deciding which card to play with each pitch. And then what matters is how well do you execute the pitch. But even that's pretty simple. I think where it gets and you know, this is fitting enough for baseball. Certainly, we started to encounter this a bit when we were playing franchise mode. The complexity in games like this really lives in the advanced stats. When you go into stuff like franchise mode and you start playing around with like identifying what makes a valuable or good player, because you know, baseball is kind of it's kind of an odd game in that they play so many games. Mm-hmm. So you have this weird thing of there is a lot more repetition in baseball. These players are going to go out and do their thing again and again and again and again. And crucially, like you're not going, unlike in a football game, maybe where you know, there's only 17 games you got to play through in a season. Maybe you could do that, you know, feasibly. You could play every game in your franchise mode, and every play could be really impactful for the outcome of your season. You know, like you want to take every snap as the quarterback.
Also, outliers can be successful. Like when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, you know, a year ago, they were not a particularly great team during the season, and then just were on fire when they hit the playoffs and went to the Super Bowl. And like, that is just less likely to happen that is less likely to happen to the Bengals if the playoffs were like baseball or basketball. It's like, hey, you got to win a 3-game series against the Chiefs. Like, you're just not going to do that. But you might win one game, and they did, and they stacked that a couple of times. And the interesting thing about baseball, and I think how the stats maybe end up becoming more important in that regard, contextually, is because you have to prove it over and over again. There is less chance for outliers because the outliers are going to get just kind of squashed out by just sheer fact that you have to show up and do it over and over again.
And like roster construction becomes a real puzzle that you're putting together. Like that's not to say that is also true in football, especially because there's different styles to running an offense or defense that some players fit better than others. But like with baseball, there are a lot of elements like you need to make sure that, especially the pitching staff is where you see this come up a lot, where it's like you need to have a pretty decent arsenal of both available, like you need in your pitching staff, they need to yield a pretty wide selection of pitches that you can like reliably deliver. But then they have different stats in terms of like how well they deliver to left or right-handed hitters, for instance. And so that becomes another factor, and you start really needing, it's not a situation where you can safely just say, I need to go find the best pitcher I can. And so just like sort by overall ability score and like find me a good pitcher. You know, as you're building out that pitching staff, maybe you don't want that best overall because it actually turns out you have a huge gap in your lineup, but you need to be able to interpret the stats well enough to identify it. And I feel like we were not there yet.
I mean, we were also kind of rushing through it in the pursuit of Mr.
We were. I restarted. I started my own Cubs franchise, and like I spent 2 hours in like day one of spring training being like, who the fuck are these people? Which also taught me a lot about the Cubs. Who the fuck are these people?
There's been a lot of roster turnover. It is a much different team than it was. There's very few players you'd recognize, even if you're paying attention to the post 2016 like hangover. Like Ian Happ, like is a name that's been around for a couple of years, but it is broadly a radically different. It's not dissimilar to the turnover on the Bears post 2018, in which you know you can recognize your Eddie Jacksons, right? Like a couple of players made it through, but broadly speaking, it is a completely different team than the one that managed to eke out a championship in 2016.
Well, and that's where it gets like. So I'm sitting there, and you were sort of jokingly, but you were right. Like, we should blow this team up even more. Was kind of your position. Was like, you know, we're pretty much, you know, you really helpfully they give you the thing where you can see your roster strength at each position. Mm-hmm. So you got your depth chart, but then above the depth chart, it just shows you like where you're like projected to rank in Major League Baseball at that position. And I think we were both observing like Cubs were bottom half of the league pretty much across the board, I think, except like shortstop.
Yeah.
And it was kind of being buttressed by there were still a few, like, maybe not necessarily stars at these positions, but still like very good players who commanded high salaries and had good stats. But like, what good is that to us when the team is so middling overall? And so then you have the follow-on question of, I should deal these guys, but it's hard to assess, like, what is a good trade? You know, it's like you don't want to be the schmuck who's like, I'm blowing it up, give me all the prospects. You need to make sure you're getting good value, which does mean identifying like what are other teams' needs, who is likely a good trade partner for this, which also does tend to like I did find it illustrates why certain organizations tend to do business with each other repeatedly. Like that's a lot of teams out there, and it's way easier if you're just like, here are a few teams that I just tend to follow, that we tend to have complementary needs, and we'll just, I'll just keep tabs on their pipeline and they'll keep tabs on mine, and we need to do a deal. We can just pick up the phone. Like famously, I guess the Sox and the Cubs don't do business together, which has got to be infuriating for players. Because like, please talk to each other. If you're going to trade me across town so I can keep my house and keep my kids in school. But no, Cubs and Sox do not do business across their front office.
No, I think there was a Craig Kimbrell. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He was a closer for the Cubs during the kind of final stretch of hoping the post 2016 lineup would continue to be worth a damn. And he then played for the White Sox, I think last year. I don't know if that was a trade though, but it was a rare instance to which a player went directly from one team to the other. But whether through trade or release and then sign, it's very rare for that to happen. It was like a rare instance of one from the last couple of years.
But yeah, I mean, like, so I'm pretty clear on this. I love the show. I don't know baseball well enough, but every year I'm like, I'm going to learn more about baseball, and I'm going to learn more about baseball so I can play the show better. And the show's going to teach me more about baseball. But like, I find it such a good presentation. It has such a good vibe of a baseball game,
and you can make it pretty arcadey. Like that was the thing that. I've not drilled down in this in Madden, and maybe you and I will try and make a genuine attempt at that this year. But there's just, I've accepted the fact that I'm never going to be able to play Madden at the face value, like what it's presenting. It's just, I don't have the time or interest to learn that layer of complexity. Is there a version of that game that I can play that is not quite NFL Blitz, but is somewhere like that is more arcadey, where it's more throw ball, guy catch, touchdown, that I can enjoy. And what's nice about MLB The Show is like the timing based stuff is pretty easy to grok. Like it made like I can just get in here and kind of swing, and it's easy enough to like throw the ball around to like and run the batters or around the bases. And I found myself really enjoying that, and I actually like the complexity of the pitching stuff. Like hitting is hard to the point of can be frustrating if you're not going to put in the work to really like develop the mental, like the cognitive skills to recognize how these balls are going to go, what swings make sense. I don't know that I'm going to put in that time. The pitching stuff is really interesting. Like I ended up liking, of all the pitching interfaces, the one I liked the most was the Pulse, where the way it lines up is you can see sort of the batter box. It sort of identifies in a checker box format like strengths and weaknesses for that particular hitter, and you can see the kind of curvature of the ball that you're gonna throw, like what direction it's gonna go in, kind of generally speaking, and then that kind of all feeds into what kind of pitch am I gonna throw, curveball, et cetera, et cetera. And you were playing one that I think uses kind of the golf meter, like a woo, woo, and it like bounces back and forth, and you're lining it up into a spot. And the one that people were recommending for me, just because of my familiarity with like kind of rhythm games and things like that, was one called Pulse, where you still just have the little circle that's indicating where like the direction the ball is going to head in, but then what determines whether it's a good pitch or a bad pitch, or like the accuracy and the speed, is like waiting for that circle to pulse all the way to the center. And it just adds a little bit of, for lack of a better term, like gamification of this like minute action that you're doing over and over and over again in the game, but makes every one of those just, I don't know, it adds just a little bit to it beyond just I'm playing a card and then watching it play out, which is totally fine if that's how you want to play it, which is that you can kind of construct the game into not quite being a very gorgeous sim, in which you're just choosing actions and watching the stats play themselves out. But you can kind of adjust those layers in a way that if I want to play this, not quite RBI baseball level arcade, but something that gives me the beautiful presentation of MLB The Show, but also I can kind of turn my brain off and just like enjoy myself. I didn't quite know that the game had that level of options, and it was nice to revisit the game and both see, I don't know what like level of like history those play styles are showing, like in terms of like, is this 10 years of them trying different inputs and they just can't get rid of any of them because there's some level of players that glom onto it and they've got it, they're going to stick with it. But regardless, like the existence of all of them, I think, and whether it's both preference in terms of your own level of simulation that you want to engage with, or just like what level of sim you want, I was pleasantly surprised to discover that you can customize the game to make it just, I don't know, like I want to goof around with the Cubs for an hour or two and not necessarily get into the franchise level stuff that you're going to get to, but I can still sim a season and let the game take care of all that stuff. And
I don't know,
it's just gorgeous. It looks amazing.
If I get my feet under me with franchise mode, and I don't mean like actually figure it out, but I mean get to like Motorsport Manager levels of like understanding it at least. I don't know, maybe like I would love to do this again, and like maybe we do those cool like PlayStation sharing features where I just like bring you into my session and we sort of go through like
the critical moments.
Yeah. A few weeks in the life of the 2023 fictional Cubs. Mm-hmm. Be like, I think I figured out trade value well enough. It's time to deal Stroman.
Well, you can do this sort of thing where because you can skip the critical moments and have those get simmed. Part of the way the game works in the franchise mode is like, hey, bottom of the ninth, and this like the end of the series with the Brewers. Do you want to play this? Like, do you want to play this last like rally in the bottom of the ninth? You don't have to, but you can. But in that way, you could do the franchise mode, and if you get your team on the edge of the postseason or into the postseason, okay, well, I'm just going to play the playoffs. Like I simmed everything else, set my team up. Now I'm going to enjoy the postseason part of it. And so you let me know how your Cubbies do, and I'll have to join you for good or ill.
So just a quick, aside here. The other thing I've been playing. So my Resident Evil journey is continuing.
Mr. X,
and this is maybe where it stops.
Rob gonna stop playing at my favorite part of the game.
Just 2.
Yeah, I had pretty successfully managed to know nothing about Mr. X. Like I had like sort of tuned out. Like I'd seen pictures of Big Goon, but I hadn't really like taken it all in.
Stomp.
And so you can imagine my shock when I finally got that helicopter moved out of the way so I could move through the police station and get back inside. And as I go there to like walk past the no longer burning helicopter, a big man in a trench coat and a hat, with like made of steel, is weird gray pallor, just comes, flings the helicopter around, and I'm like, okay, cool, boss fight. And
well,
yeah, I was real disappointed when I got him down. I was like, what do I have to do? He's down. What do I do now?
Where's the weak point? Where's the big glowing orange glob?
I'm circling around him. Like, surely there's going to be something I'm supposed to hit here. And they just stood up and like launched me across the roof and killed me. And so, but now I'm in this mode, and this is like, it's almost like exactly what brought me to my knees in Amnesia, which is just this sensation of like, I know what I have to do. I have to go to this place, put the two objects together, move some things around. I have to go pick up this item, got to do all these various little like tasks, all these little errands that Resident Evil has you doing. But now every single one of them, I'm on this timer. Mm-hmm. And the timer is this really hard to pin down heavy tread of his footsteps. And it always sounds, were we talking on podcast the other day about like auditory hallucinations? Just from like starting to like, you expect the noise, so you start hearing it.
Yeah, it's in the context of like a hallucinatory like cries that parents hear. from Babies.
Took absolutely no time before I started just hearing the stomp.
Yes.
Like I was like,
the audio design in Resident Evil 2 is exceptional because what you're running into, it was frankly my favorite part of the game, even though I spent the entire time terrified and wishing for it to be over. It's one of those moments where like, and this is my relationship with like being scared, is where like I'm truly scared. Those moments with Mr. X were like some of the most like actual terror I've experienced with a video game in like the last 5 years. And when I'd be playing that game at night by myself, all I can think to myself is, why do I do this to myself? I just want this part to be over and get past it. And then in the years, as I get beyond it, I go back and I'm nostalgic from like, oh, remember when I fucking hated that? Remember when I was so scared hearing those steps? And the design of it is exceptional because you cannot always pin down if he is rooms away or rooms above. And I imagine that is a lot of what you are struggling with here is you start to make assumptions, you start to guess, and you start to hope that, well, I think he's stomping about up above, which gives me, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes to screw around here before I have to actually hoof it. And you're wrong. And he's actually around the corner and you're dead.
It's but it is well timed because I was definitely getting complacent because like, while the zombies are annoying because they just soak up ammo, right? Like every time one of these fuckers is like in a tight hallway, to truly put them down is going to take like a full magazine. And I don't have the time or the ammo for that shit. But it was just getting to a point where I was like, okay, I just need to, sort of make my laps around the building and unlock the different rooms, get the various keys,
hey, Fred, like there's the zombie that I'm not going to take down. Like, oh, hey, Sally. Like you just wave to all the different zombies that you just don't have the ammo.
Yep.
But they're like,
all right, going to bait you around this corner. You get confused and I'm going to juke past
you. It's like, the old people at the mall, like at 6 a.m., like going on your walk and running into all your friends, except these are just zombies you don't want to waste ammo on.
Right. And now, like, suddenly the entire space has become way more hostile and terrifying because like the fact that he can violate the sanctity of the main hall really stunned me. I was like, I made it away from him and it's like, main hall, go over, save, manage some inventory. And I'm like, thump. And I'm like, yeah, he's probably just pacing around outside the waiting room, waiting for me to come back out there, but I'm not going out there. And I hear the door open and I hear like, thud. And it's like immediate. And I'm like, he's in the main hall? My main hall? That I shared with my friend? Who became a zombie, but he was my friend? And so this is it's incredibly stressful, but like it is the sort of thing where I don't know, I was playing late at night. Maybe I just didn't have the energy reserves after a certain point. I still made a lot of progress, but it was just like nightmarish, right? Where it was like, well, I guess something else I appreciate is it does seem like he's programmed not to totally corner you.
No.
I made a run into the interrogation rooms because there's some items there that you need, but like that is a dead end. And so if Mr. X shows up there, like that should be you're just going to get pounded, to a pulp. He didn't come. Oddly enough, there he stayed away. I finished that, but then the minute I got back into a place where there were like multiple entrances and exits, suddenly he was back in my face.
Yeah, it is a enemy design that is brilliant in a lot of ways, but I think where it is running its most effective, and you're seeing it demonstrated here, is that it's not really something that kills you all the time. It just makes you think it's going to. Not
even very often. He's like, I was like, he is slower than me. Like not so much slower that I can afford to like.
It's the
run the wrong direction,
right? You have like it is impacting your risk management in a game that, in a series, in a genre that like that risk management becomes easier to deal with over time. And part of what is great about Mr. X is that it kind of tries to interrupt that like flow and that like that trajectory that is present in all of these games. And it's why it's very understandable that like the game after this, they're like, that Mr. X stuff, which was that by itself an extension of the Tyrant from Resident Evil 1, what if we just built the whole game around that? well, they didn't do a very good job of that. I've never been a fan of Resident Evil 3, even if I think conceptually it's a really smart idea. I see why they landed on that being like building a whole game around the idea of the
so 3 is all about this pursuit.
Yeah, there is a creature called Nemesis that is following you throughout the entire game. And I think the remake they did, marginally improves on the idea, but like it needed to like bake in the oven longer. I know Resident Evil 3 has its fans. I don't think it's a bad game. I just think it pales in comparison and doesn't live up to its premise as much as it could have. But and part of what works about it in 2 is that it's just this section, right? Like then like it's a section of the game. It is not the entirety of the game, but it comes at a really good time when you feel like, master of my domain, this police station. Like, I understand you. I'm ready to go to the next section, but I'm going to clean up here. And then in comes Mr. X to just take familiar places, like the patterns you were using to get around effectively. No longer do those patterns sustain. And I think that's why it works really well. I think it's one of those things that I think you're experiencing a similar sort of feeling that in the moment you're cursing it. And then you start talking about it and you're like, wow, that is really smart what it's doing. But then you get into it yourself again. You're like, man, fuck him. Like, I hate this. And that is, I think, a testament to his design more than anything else.
So you've also been going back to a classic this week.
I have. This week I streamed for a couple of hours, a return back to the wild. Inspired by
Return.
Yes. Inspired by the kind of 10 minutes of footage that Nintendo released for Tears of the Kingdom, the Breath of the Wild 2 follow-up that is coming a little over a month from now. I thought to myself, that game is complicated. Like, I have not received Tears of the Kingdom from Nintendo. I'm not violating any email NDAs. I have access to nothing, but I don't know when that game is going to show up. And I'm like, do I just want to jump into that sequel right away after 6 years, or do I want to get my feet wet with Breath of the Wild? And so I wanted to get my feet wet, and my thought was, there's 2 ways I can do that. I can just start a fresh save and just like run through the tutorial, kind of like go through the systems again. It's like, this is the flow of Breath of the Wild. Do a couple shrines, like maybe do 1 divine beast, and like, okay, I'm good. I chose plan B, which is like, I'm going to load a 6-year save at the end game and not know what's going on. And me and chat, we're going to figure this out together. And it was delightful. One, the DLC that was released for Breath of the Wild added this really neat, I'm not telling anyone anything that's played this game or the DLC that they wouldn't know, but it was new to me because I never returned to the game after finishing it. I never played any of the DLC. It's called Hero's Path. So when you load into the map, you can then press a button that will show you trajectory of your character on the map. And so it's like you'll see your character warping between spots. It tells you every time you die and makes a hilarious little Link dying sound. Yep. Like every time he goes out. And you can watch the 70 hours or so that I played of that game, and we did so, and so it was very funny because people were like, you didn't see a lot of this game, and it appears your character suggests a person who was going from one main objective to the other. And I was like, yeah, have you listened to the last 6 years of Waypoint Radio? I wasn't lying to you. I tend to go where the objectives point me.
I have to do a super quickly. I just want to shout out a friend and like artist game dev that I know online, Everest Pipkin. I don't know if y'all have seen their the traveling swordsman problem. When that mode came out where you can track where you're going, they tried to get as far and finish a game of Breath of the Wild without that line ever crossing over it itself.
Oh wow!
And it's amazing the length they have to go to make sure that that line never crosses back, and it's a really fun series of videos. So you go look that up, Everest Pipkin on Twitter. There's like links there, but really,
it's a great meta layer, and it's fascinating because this is a feature that was added after the game's initial release, and so the data was just sitting there being, like monitored by the game in whatever, man, like I have no idea if that was something that the developers thought of after the fact. It was like, hey, actually, this would be neat to surface, or it was something that just didn't get it into the final game. But it was really like retroactively, I was like, made me super mad that more games don't surface data in that way. Like occasionally we get infographics of like, so many people died here and yada yada. Yeah, and heat maps. But I was like, man, like I wish Elden Ring had this. I would love to watch like my little character like
the amount
working
of
its way across.
Yeah, the amount of places on that map when the first time I looked at this hero, my line was like, I thought I'd been there. I would have sworn I walked through that area, but I totally didn't. And then I go there, and there's something there, which is also a wild thing about a game like Breath of the Wild, where you think, surely this little patch of field that I accidentally didn't cross is just a patch of field. Can't
have like 7 puzzles that I missed. It's like, oh no, there's 10.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I knew I did not exhaust that game. That is a game to exhaust requires hundreds of hours of play. You know, I've always kind of described myself as not a completionist, but like what's the term? Oh, I wrote about it. I'll look it up. But like, I like doing things up to a point and then kind of hit that, but it's never quite completionist.
Right.
And so I felt 70 hours was like a good amount of time in Breath of the Wild, and I felt I had a full meal. And what was so revealing was, buddy, like you had like maybe a couple of like if this was 6 entrees, like you had 1 or 2. Like there was like many courses left for you to consume. And that's what that heroes mode like exposed like so thoroughly. Like because when you look at the things that are marked naturally by finding towers and shrines, or the markers you have made on there, if you were to look at my map, it doesn't. Maybe you could tell that it wasn't exhausted, but it's like, oh, you've been like kind of all of the big places. And then you watch the heroes like journey, and it's like, no, you have not. Like you went to that mountain, but you like climbed it from one way, did one thing, and then didn't explore anything else there. And what was so fascinating about revisiting it, once we kind of were able to start getting over like the obvious part of what happens when you revisit a 6-year-old save, and you have to like understand systems that are like, you know, you're 6 years separated from. There's no easy way to just like jump into a tutorial and like, how does aiming how do bombs work? You know, there's nothing like that. So once we got beyond that, and chat was very helpful in me figuring that stuff out, was looking back at a map in which I had made markers, right? Like many games with maps, you can put like various stamps or markers down that signify, well, you've given it some sort of signification, right? Like it can be like in Breath of the Wild, there's like a sword, a skull, a leaf, and the game doesn't tell you this is what represents this. Right. You have to imbue it with some sort of meaning and definition. And so what I didn't know what the arc of the stream was going to be when I started it. What we kind of stumbled into was, let's revisit what Patrick thought was important and worth marking 6 years ago and go figure out what that shit is. And what was so much fun was figuring out, what did I think 6 years ago? Like, why is this a sword? What is this skull thing? That seems ominous, but I don't know what's up there. And it was delightful to kind of excavate my own memories that don't exist anymore. Like I did those things, but my brain shot that out of a cannon probably a month after that guy was done with that game, and was a mixture of watching people be excited for like, oh, I remember what that hill is. Like, I know why you marked that with a sword, or I know why you marked that with a skull. And people were able to remember kind of like their own memories of playing the game. A lot of people are also revisiting it as they get ready for Tears of the Kingdom. And then just having to figure out what I was doing, what my own flow of the game was 6 years ago, was just really delightful and put me in a really good spot to get excited for Tears of the Kingdom. I know you joined the stream about halfway through. We're attempting to help me to no avail of my own personal inability to take such hints. But I don't know, was there anything you noticed about revisiting that game again while I did so?
Just how truly expressive some of the like powers end up feeling, like the ways that you tackle, like there were so many, like especially when you were fighting the Lionel, there were so many people like giving you hints and stuff, like things that they would do when they fought this one specific enemy that is kind of a combat check. And you basically ignored most of those, which is like you were busy.
I
You were
mostly
like-
just consumed enough health to brute force my way through the fight.
But like, you know, you had to gather those materials. You had to go and cook those materials at some point for it to be worth it.
6-year-old Patrick was preparing himself for this fight. He just didn't know it
I
yet.
never thought like, oh, freeze him. Like, I barely used stasis against enemies. But like that guy, you fucking wailed on him while he was stuck in stasis. And I'm like, oh,
the only way to get through that fight was to not fight.
Yeah.
And because Patrick, do you remember how to dodge? I don't. Are you reliably locking onto this enemy? I'm not. What if you just kept him in place and whacked him with a big sword over and over?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it worked. It's great. And it's just like, it's the beauty of one of the beauties of this game is just the amount of options that you have that like feel kind of, you know, there's so many different ways that you can tackle any one thing, and they're all equally valid if you're having fun, obviously. Like, and you are often having fun the way that you choose to like tackle any problem in that game. And it's just like, damn, like they really hit it out of the park with this one, and I'm super excited to see Tears of the Kingdom add a layer to expressivity, right? Like the way that all the crafting stuff looks is like they're giving you more tools to express different problem solving skills in different ways, right? And I'm, you know, just got me even more hype for Tears again, of course.
Yeah, and I think someone noticed in the chat, but it's something that you don't, you know, you can remember intellectually, but it's another thing to sort of like experience again. It's just how boring the game is, and I mean that as as the highest of compliments. Like games these days are so terrified of letting the player kind of luxuriate in a space and figure it out for themselves. And Breath of the Wild, that's not like that's not like an occasional thing. That is like the defining experience of Breath of the Wild. And frequently I find games that tilt in the direction of find your own fun to be frustrating, because again, like I like being kind of nudged in a direction and given an objective. And Breath of the Wild, what's amazing about it is that it does both.
Yeah.
Like it nudges, it's, hey, here's a big glowing go here thing to do. And then along the way, you're going to get distracted and bored and do different things. And it's just such a difficult thing to pull off that you can't help but look at it as a happy accident more than intentional, because otherwise I think more people would do it. And not many have tried or done it in the 6 years since. I mean, you know, there was a lot of conversation after Breath of the Wild, like, what is going to be the impact of Breath of the Wild? Yeah. And I'm sure it's happened. Games have like taken some lessons, but like broadly speaking, Tears of the Kingdom is arriving, and it's like, well, the game industry gave Nintendo 6 years to make another one of these. Yeah. You know, you can see parts of it in things like Elden Ring and stuff like that, certainly. But it seems like Nintendo still has that lane to itself, because I think it's just a very difficult thing to pull off, which makes me all the more excited of what did they think was interesting about their own thing.
100%.
And, you know, and some of the powers they've shown, we're getting, you know, glimpses of that. I think like the glomming of items onto one another is at once an acknowledgement of people's frustrations with the crafting and the durability system, while also not getting rid of it. You know what I mean? It's like, look, things are going to break, but also we've made it easier than ever for you to just make some shit up.
Yeah.
Like you just take a stick and put a rock on it. Boom.
Boom.
You know,
stronger stick.
And that rules, because I it's like a really smart solution that, you know, in the exhaustive discourse around that game, and was durability a problem, I didn't see anyone suggest, I'm sure it's out there on a forum post,
sure,
like, hey, this is maybe a middle ground that kind of addresses both conversations at once.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think I'm going to end up playing the Champions Ballad story DLC on stream over the next couple of weeks as we gear up towards Tears of the Kingdom, so you can stay tuned for that. I don't know if I'll get to a part 2 next week or not, because I'll be out of pocket on Thursday and Friday, but at least we'll be doing that heading up to was it May 12th? I think is when that game
I was about to ask, how much time do I have to finish that game? Because I also never finished it.
Yeah, you have I think May 12th is when
12th.
it comes out.
Yeah.
So you've got a little bit of time, and then at some point during that period, I'll have to presumably shut the fuck up about it whenever
And then
secret thing that comes across my desk.
We'll never hear from Patrick again.
When some document comes across my desk that lets me know what the file size is for Tears of the Kingdom, which is a regular thing that Nintendo tells you as part of their NDA process for their games. You can talk about
super curious
the file size of this game.
I'm super curious what thing they won't allow you to talk about this time.
Oh, what's going to be the Claymore?
What's going to be the Claymore of Tears of the Kingdom? Or have they loosened up? Who knows?
I really doubt it. I've been on. I do all of the calls for that and again to underscore it, Kato. There's only one company that does a call.
Right.
Death Stranding may have made you sign an NDA that said you'll beat the game, but I didn't have to be on a call with Sony about that one. So we'll see. I will. I can tell you at a different time, or not. I don't know. Maybe NDA will say don't talk about what you can't talk about, bro. But I'm excited to continue playing more Breath of the Wild, and so if you want to check that out, we'll be doing that on the Twitch stream in the weeks before Tears of the Kingdom.
Well, before we get out of here, we should probably take a little dip into the question bucket. We got some vintage ones hanging out here.
Ooh.
Ash writes, "Hello, friends. What job are you the most qualified for that you would never do in a million years? For instance, I have 2 theater degrees, an education degree, and 3 years of working in schools scattered around my 20s, but never in a million years would I ever be a theater teacher for kids of any age. My tolerance for being around kids is at about the 20-minute mark. They're walking over sensory machines. You can't cuss in front of them, and they think they know more about Pokemon than me. Plus, it turns out working in a school setting is absolutely dreadful. In a different vein, even though I'm Mexican, trans, queer, and disabled, the thought of working in a diversity and inclusion department of a company or university sounds terrible. I had enough of a time being the token everything in grad school, and at least in my experience, the work of an I&D department is to make the company university look better and not to improve the material working conditions of marginalized people. So, what jobs are y'all uniquely qualified for that you think you'd be good at and that you would never, absolutely never do?"
This is tough. All I've done is the same shit. Kato, you have a little variety in your life.
I mean, yeah, I could have been a freelance photographer, but absolutely, like, I'm not about. I was never really interested in that sort of photography work, like,
wedding photographer. Kato was not a potential option.
It was in theory, but no, like, I couldn't bring myself to. I did it once for a friend as a wedding gift because we were all poor and that's how we did wedding gifts. Like,
yep, fair.
And I was like, I mean, I understand why people do it. It pays a lot, and if you're trying to be freelance and have that flexibility, that's one of the easiest ways to secure a large amount of money in like a one fell swoop, because people pay a shit ton of money for it. It's very important,
especially if you do the video stuff these days.
Yeah. So, but like, I couldn't, like, it was hard enough just photographing my friends. The idea of doing it with like randos and like getting, because you have to to interact with people. You have to like most of that wedding was like, the bride and groom's family, of whom I did not know at all. So I still had to do the like, all right, everyone, like interacting with people to make them be like, hey, smile, but look casual, like realize I'm here, but not, the whole social aspect of it put me off it. But technically I could have been that person, but very quickly realized I hated being doing that job. Yeah, never.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I like. The thing is, I have always suspected that I'd either be really good at most jobs or shit at most jobs. And not like, because for me, the issue is kind of like, for instance, give you an example, like the thing that seemed for a long time like it would be the most sensible path for me, the thing that made the most sense to me in the world would have been to like go to grad school and become like a professor, or I don't know, maybe it's just a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of like lecturing, public speaking, a lot of spending time like studying, which I really liked, at the time. But it was like also it just seemed like a thing that I'd be good at. I enjoyed tutoring a lot, but I don't know if I would have actually been good at it, because the thing I wouldn't have really enjoyed was grading papers. I think this is the other thing, is like seeing like my mom as a high school teacher in a public school that was underfunded was like, and this was, 15, 20 years ago in Indiana, before things got really bad in public schools in Indiana. It was like, oh, this job would just break me. Like I just could not keep up with the workload. I would drown. Ditto, like, would grad school have panned out? I don't know. Like I'm a pretty smart guy. I figure out a lot of subjects, but like grad school is a different kettle of fish, where it's like you have to really learn your shit. And it's really, really intensive. Like part of the weeding out process there is to basically like in certain disciplines, it is to like, it's like intellectual boot camp in some ways, where like some people are going to be like, I thought I liked this field, and it turns out I do not as much as or not enough to overcome the like torment of having to do this amount of work and like cover this amount of bases with this kind of criminally negligible pay, in these sort of living circumstances.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, I always sort of figured that, push comes to shove, like going and being a teacher would have made sense. And I suspect I would have been good at it. But also in the case of like teaching public, like high school, for instance, it was clearly not an appealing job to me. And in the case of like going to try to enter academia, it was clearly one, I don't know if I can hack it. And two, like, I don't even know if it would be worth it. Having seen a lot of people go through grad school, it seemed like it would be really, really gnarly. And then you sort of go into an academic job market that is a real, real crapshoot. So I think that's stuff I tend to think about, but I don't know. There's times I do also suspect that if I'd just been like, I don't know, I will just go try to find an office job at some sort of boring company, things would have been fine and I'd be perfectly happy. You know what I mean? And but those are the jobs that I just would have considered, because like nothing about them would have appealed to me. Right. Like I remember catching with a friend from college, and she was a office manager at a like, I think it was a like law firm in Chicago. And she was like, oh, I don't care about my job, but I do love what it pays, and I don't think about it at all outside the hours I'm at work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't imagine.
What must that be like?
Yeah. It was just like go in,
glorious.
Phone it in, go out, have awesome life. And I was like, I'm pursuing my passions. Could you get this check? I don't remember what I ordered. I think I just, I don't know, you wanted the basket of fries. I just ate some of the fries.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I was trying to think it over more. I mean, like I always wanted to have kids. Like I love hanging around kids. I don't have the 20-minute limit. Like I could sit and play with kids all day, always have been able to do that. Like I have a high tolerance. Like when I go to, this is even before I had children, but like go to the party with the kids and like there's the big water slide. None of the adults are over there. They're all drinking. Like I've brought like my swimsuit. I'm going to go on the water slide. I'm going to go essentially be a babysitter to your kids and go play with them on that water slide. Like that's always been a thing I found appealing. And now I find as my kids are getting older, like we are only going to have 2. We're not planning to have a third kid. It's like, okay, well, like my oldest is about 6 turning 7, like not an adult, but you know what I mean? Like we're on a track. Like my youngest, I still think of it as a baby. It's like, nah, she just literally just turned 3. And it's like, she's on that same track. And like, do I want to work at a daycare or run one? Like, no, but I wish there was a world that like I got to interact with young kids of a certain age all the time. in a way that like does not sound exceedingly
This
creepy.
is me. Every time I go to the dog daycare,
Sure.
and there's a little dog play area where like only employees are allowed because like the dogs know the employees, but like they're not gonna like they will not react to just some rando entering the like playroom for the dogs. And there's times I'm like, there's a lot about this job that does not seem appealing, right? Like spending all day in a place filled with like little pets with their little pet smells, cleaning up their little pet messes.
Yeah, same. You could apply the same logic to like, you know, the daycare. It's like, do you want to wipe asses for like 12 different kids that like shit their pants that day?
But
like,
in exchange for that, I get to see them like, and sometimes when I come up before they notice I'm there, I get to see them go back into the play area and just be like mobbed by the dogs and adored and playing with all the different dogs that like I haven't gotten to meet, but I know they're in the area and Mina gets to play with them, but I don't know who they are. And I'm like, this is the one time where I'm like, I don't know that I want to do this job, but I want to be around for the highlights.
Yeah. Can I be the equivalent of like a substitute teacher for like look, I'll take the bad, you know, the things you're talking about, the smells, like all I can do that in low doses, like kind of like occasionally just like come in and, you know, I could do this for a little bit and then I leave and it's not my daily life. Yeah, I'm a similar sort of boats. Like, and when I drop my kids off at their daycare, there was like 2 or 3 kids who are like, "Oh fuck yeah, Patrick's here!" They're like, they come over and they're trying to bother me and play with me because I'm the one like cracking jokes at them, like when I'm trying to get my kids into, you know, their different stations around the daycare, and it's like, this rules. Like I could do this a lot, but I probably won't. I'll probably still be doing this, Rob.
Yeah. Peter from Toronto writes, "Dear Waypoint, on a recent-ish, maybe not really, Waypoint Twitch stream, Rob and Kato casually mentioned cleaning their coffee grinders. This led to the following stream of thoughts. Hey, I own a coffee grinder. Huh, I've never cleaned my coffee grinder. I've had a coffee grinder for 2 years. Oh no. After a few minutes and a helpful YouTube video later, my grinder was free of detritus and grinding beans in half the time. Anyway, question. What obvious things were you blissfully unaware of for far too long?"
Oh, shit. This
is embarrassing.
This has to have happened to me. I'm gonna have to take like a minute.
The thing you need to understand is, I didn't own a dishwasher for like 12 years.
Okay.
We moved to this place and had a dishwasher. Well, and I just sort of figured the dishwasher washed the dishes and then did like something with the detritus, like just drained it or something, or maybe it had some sort of like special super secret garbage disposal in the base of the dishwasher that took all the little goop and garbage and like just adiosed it out of the house. And so I just used that dishwasher for like a year, maybe more, without ever like identifying the trap or how to maintain it or clean it, or that this was a thing I had to do. And instead I was just like, this dishwasher is a real piece of shit. Like, it's really not cleaning things very well anymore. It's getting a little funky in there too. Like, dishes are starting to like, they come out smelling kind of weird. Oh boy.
My God.
And then, you know, I was like, nobody told me this, but I was just like, it was like, once I was curious, like, what could possibly be happening with this dishwasher? You look at an object with new eyes and you sort of see what are obviously like maintenance hatches and like things you're supposed to twist.
I've never opened that, huh?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, that is clearly meant to, that's a handle. That is a handle. There's a little like place you're supposed to like pull up on it and it releases. And so that was a horse. And the dishwasher was fucked. It was old as hell. It wasn't very good, but like it did a lot better after doing that. But yeah, it was just a thing where it was like, we'd owned a dishwasher growing up, but like, even though I did most of the dishes, it was my parents who did like sort of anything that involved actually like messing with something that could be the guts of a device. They were going to do that.
Right.
And so I just didn't do that with the dishwasher. And so I didn't have that experience. That wasn't in the memory bank when I finally started using a dishwasher again.
I avoided that by growing up in a household where the dishwasher was essentially a large drying rack. and basically only ever got used to put wet things in and then hold things for a while when you forget that they're in there.
I've had Asian friends swear to God that like this is only an Asian thing, and I was like, I don't think
it's an
it
immigrant
is.
parents thing. I think this is. I've definitely seen it across many different other like. I've shared that story with other first gen people, being like, "Oh yeah,
what's the reason? Is that they don't trust the dishwasher?
Yeah,
to wash it, or it's just
partially.
like, okay, right.
Slash, there's also an assumption. I think at least for my parents, there was an assumption that it in not being targeted and being kind of this mass thing would actually use more water. When in fact, if you like, at least these days, I've heard that it's actually more efficient in its water usage.
Yes. There was a whole campaign with was it Ice-T, I think, and his wife Coco that there was like, please just use your dishwasher.
It's using so much less water.
Leaving the tap water on for like 20 minutes while you wash the dishes and then still put things in the dishwasher is really bad.
The only way I think you can even get close to like the efficiency is if you have the side-by-side sink and you can have like the two things like shallowly filled with water.
Yes.
But even there, you're still like each halves of that sink is probably filled with like 3 or 4 gallons of water.
Right.
To get a few inches of like soaking space and rinsing space. And then, you have to change out the water in the cleaning side anyway, or else you're just like cleaning dishes in dirty water. So
I think part of it also for at least my family was definitely like there were 6 of us. Once you're getting to that many like sets of things, our drying rack, our like regular size drying rack, wouldn't fit everything,
not
and
getting
therefore
the job done.
it just it became overflow, and then that's just what that was what it always was like.
Well, and also in fairness, like we have to like dishwashers are kind of cool when they work, but like. They don't. Like if you're good at washing dishes, if you're like you're pretty fast where you can like go through a stack of dishes following like family dinner. And yes, it's like 30-40 minutes to like go through all the dishes and clean the kitchen and all that. But at least everything's clean and you know it's clean and you did a good job versus you open the dishwasher and like half the shit is still dirty and now it's got stuff baked onto it. You're like, no, I could sorry, if I wanted to fuck up this, my flatware, I would just have let the children have it.
I also like washing dishes. I think we had a conversation with this with Ren at some point about
all-time podcast activity.
What are what are like mundane housekeeping tasks that you actually enjoy doing, and mine was like washing the dishes. So I've trained myself to not do it, and and there's still certain things that I have to do that don't like fit in there, etc. But like I used to I would raise my hand. I'm like, like one of the things that repay my wife for like cooking all the time was like, I will do that. You take the kids, 40 minutes, headphones on, like let's listen to a podcast at 1.3.
Yeah, I'm now involuntarily back in that world.
Yeah.
I opened up my dishwasher the other day and things didn't look as clean as normal. And then like I realized that the little status light on top of the dishwasher door was like water line, error code 15.
Isn't yours new?
It is new. And that error code is a stop code for it shut off the water because it detected a risk of like flooding.
Hell yeah.
So there's something in my water line, but this is I got to get the service techs out here to deal with it. And so my miraculous dishwasher is currently, it's all out of miracles. And now I'm back to doing everything. And I'm back to relying on the one drying rack. It fills up in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's like, that was like, it's not it could hold a ton of plates if all I had to deal with was plates. But then it's like, but I also used this pan to make this dish. Yep.
Baking sheet, whatever.
Sorry, no more room.
Yep.
Because also if you overload it, there's a risk that there's sort of an avalanche of dishes that then break a bunch of stuff. So you can't risk that. But it's not the worst task, but I definitely want my dishwasher to work again.
I was trying to think of my. I mean, broadly speaking, when you buy a place and you are then responsible for things, like half the time when you have people like when I have folks come out to do something that I do not feel confident or is beyond my like limited expertise, like asking a bunch of questions. It's like, what is the obvious shit that I do not no, so that I could do this next time, or at least like remove some of the steps in the process. But the one that like fits within this trajectory of just like true, just like dumbass behavior that makes way more sense in retrospect was, we bought, a lawnmower for the house when we got the house. And then I don't know, 2 years into that, like I go out to mow the lawn.
Do you never drain the oil?
Do you need to deal with oil on a lawnmower, Rob? Because that never occurred to me. So I went to go pull the chain and it just went, it's just locked, just will not move, not budge. And I'm like, well, what's wrong? It's only 2 years old. I should get at least 5 to 7 years out of a device like this. And like Googled it and it was like, this sounds a lot like the engine locked because it's bone dry and you didn't put any oil in it. And I was like, I didn't know that you had to do that. Like it just never occurred to me. I cannot claim to have like been lazy. It just, and it's a test that I did, not my wife. When I ran it by her, she's like, I wouldn't have thought of that either. I was like, well, that makes me feel better. At least we're both.
And it's weird because this means it occupies different space in your head than your car, where you're like, car need oil.
I put gas in it. That was my thought. I have the lawnmower. I put gas in it. And of course, as soon as I thought about it, I was like, oh, right, there's the thing you take off and then like you can check the... I'm like, I get it. Like, I've seen it before. I know the visual language.
Once you examine the object, you're like, wait, there's like a little rubber gasket and a button next to it.
What does that do?
Yeah, I've never. What's that for? Yeah, no. For I think the even more insidious one is the snowblower, because you never exactly know when you're going to be done with your snowblower, because you get the freak Midwestern blizzard like in April sometimes. So you just forget that you have to do a whole like put away the snowblower thing for the season and like drain it and all that stuff.
You drain it or get the mixture that you put in the gas so that it maintains if you're going to like keep it out in the cold. Right. I finally did that this year. It was like, I didn't drain it. I waited too long, but I bought the stuff.
Because every couple years, my dad and I would have oh man, it's really coming down. Good thing we got a snowblower that we haven't thought about in 9 months.
Hope it turns on.
By the way, if it turns on, my dad's using the snowblower to do the driveway. If it doesn't turn on, I'm shoveling the driveway. Like that's how that works, right? Snowblower work, dad job. Snowblower not work, Robbie job.
At least I felt a little bit better when we went to the like Home Depot to buy. Well, like we went there to buy another one and asked, "Is there anything we can do?" They're like, no. Like if the motor has locked up because of lack of oil, like it's just whatever you could do to repair it would make no sense, and you should just buy another one. But they laugh. They're like, it is 100% the most common reason someone comes in to buy another one after.
They love that shit. I'm sure.
They're like they're just laughing. They're like, you are not the first. You will not be the last. That is like homeowner 101.
It's probably 100% where like Toro's profits come from.
Yes, that's like, the one we bought.
we're going to sell them one, and then we're going to sell them 4 more.
Yep.
All right. Our next one comes from Crouton, spelled with K. Hi there, Waypointalists. If you had the cursed basketball from Space Jam and could steal anybody's talent, whose would you steal and why? For the sake of this question, we are assuming that the basketball steals their greatest talent and not specifically their skill at basketball.
Huh.
Whose talent you want?
So is this? We had a question in the past that was if you could go into the box and acquire knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to how do we differentiate this from...
This is the thing, right? Because like my answer here would be I would whip that basketball at Vinny. Because it's like Vinny had like there's a part of me that still would be like, no, I would want to use the cursed basketball to like take Edwin Diaz's talent or something. So I too could be like an elite level closer in baseball, because like that sounds like the coolest fucking job in history. Like the idea of like it's a job where like you come out in the high leverage situations, you're a fucking badass, you're an absolute killer at this job, and then most of the time you're just hanging out with your coworkers at the water cooler and just like watching baseball and shooting the shit. Absolutely best job in sports. I think I would 100% like give me that job. But the basketball can't make me, 25 years old. The basketball, I can steal their talent, but what good is that talent now at my age?
Yeah.
But what I would love to have is access to the sort of like the know-how that Vinny has, because that would like touch every aspect of my life as it's currently constructed, right? It's all the things where it's like the little places of friction around, like, for instance, it would be way easier to say, oh, I'm just going to crack open that PC and see what's going on in there. Because like I just sort of understand how all this is all going to fit together. I sort of internalize the troubleshooting for this.
Is that talent though, or knowledge?
So there's talent, but I think there is talent. There's knowledge, right? I think there's a lot of people who have like training and knowledge the way Vinny does, but I also feel like
intuition is talent,
Vinny has an
right?
intuition and a knack for this that like is uncommon.
Yeah, can I use the basketball to take Vinny Caravello's ability to play an open world game and find their own fun without a directive? Because that is a talent. That is like I can't teach that to myself. I'm just bad at it. I can watch the way I play Sleeping Dogs, the way Vinny plays Sleeping Dogs. Different people. And he's having so much fun. And I do like that game, but we're just on different tracks. And so I think intuition is like a decent descriptor for what is what Rob is describing. I think you're right. You can't just get raw knowledge, but there are just certain people like sense of direction, right? Like sense of direction is a skill.
Yeah,
it is not like you can like know where things are, but like my dad, salesperson, like had a sense of just like, where are you? How do we get to a place? Like, hey, like that. It's like, how do you? Wow. I wish I could draw. I don't like art.
Yeah.
Like more broadly. Like I get it went broad to be art. If I got more specific, I can't play. I've tried to like learn how to play guitar, piano. I cannot draw for shit, and that stuff is just so beyond me. And I would think it would be exceptionally cool to know how to do those things. And so like you could have an instance in which it's like I could follow classes on how to like draw. But like to have any talent to do it well is something altogether different. And I think that
investment.
would be, yeah, I guess. But like, you can learn how to do, like I learned how to play guitar. It didn't stick. It was clearly me just bashing my head against a wall. And maybe if it had done more and more, maybe you could find whatever that barrier was to climb over. But I preferred the cheat code and just like one for example is I have a buddy of mine who he barely even has to teach himself a new instrument. Like he just understands music on some sort of foundational, intuitional level that like you'll hand him a new instrument and just give him a couple hours and like like, you know what I mean? Like may not be a virtuoso, but there's just something about them that just is able to see the world and these devices, instruments in a way. And so I want that. I think that sounds awesome.
I'm like, can't think of like a specific person, but I would like to be better at languages. Because I'm like, I'm already semi-bilingual. I say this because my vocabulary in Spanish is fucking horrid. But
I think that's also like music, you can memorize, there's memorizing things and then just being like understanding languages.
Right.
Like more naturally.
Yeah. I guess that's what it would be. It's like, can I get a better memory? But like, it's always been like this thing where I'm on the like, I can struggle through if it's in a romance language. I'm like I can struggle through most of that. Like for like traveling purposes. Anything outside of that though, I've tried and it's just like it's very very difficult. But I do know that there's people who like pick it up much easier, and I'd be like, I want one of those people's. That talent seems useful and fun to have. But yeah.
That'd be a good one.
Very practical talents we're stealing here.
Yeah, well, it's the like. ultimately, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want, like, I don't need the basketball to like give me a new life, right? Like, I'm not
Sure,
like,
yeah.
oh man, I wish if only I could steal someone's talent and I could like finally get out of this dog shit life and live someone else's. That's not where I'm at.
Right.
And so it'd be more like, yeah, I like largely where things are at, but what are the things that could augment it? And like make
totally.
it easier or richer in some way. And so that's where I'm gravitating towards. Now, you asked me this question 15, 20 years ago. Hell yes, I'm like stealing an athlete's talent, right? Like absolutely that is happening. Or I'm stealing like the talent of like the smartest kid in a program and being like, now I am going to grad school. I'm going to fucking dominate it. Now I know I have it on lock, except you don't know if you have it on lock until you go. It's a crucible. You just don't know who you are until you face it. But I don't recommend it. Last question here. Brian asks, inspired by Patrick's question on what Jake Solomon would design next if given all green lights, I think we've sort of seen it, as well as Rob's review of Pentiment, a game set in an uncommon setting for games, I wanted to ask you all what you wish existed outside of the garbage world of what a corporation would actually greenlight. Obscure settings, weird control choices, no limitations on style or budget, just a game you think would be nice to have exist. Personally, I would love to see a tactics game / visual novel set around the Battle of Blair Mountain.
What's the battle?
What's the battle?
I think that's the mining town battle, like literally basically a shooting war erupting between striking miners and the company and their to use a term from Justified, they're gun thugs that they brought in. I think this is basically what John Sayles' Madawan is about. But yeah, it's a wild thing because it like legitimately is like a full on like paramilitary conflict erupting over a labor dispute.
It's always difficult to come up with these like out of thin air. I mean, the one that like comes to mind immediately was like when we did the Whip It 101 on The Thing. Like, I would love, like, there's no reason for someone to make a $100 million update of that game, but like, there's so many cool things happening in it. I wish $100 million version of The Thing, like taking all of its like conceptual ideas of team dynamics and world dynamics. I want that game to exist. It won't. It shouldn't. But
it should.
In my dreams, it can. Chat GPT make $100 million The Thing. Is that can the AI make that for me?
But make it good. Make it work this time.
Yeah. Fix the code. Let me get through the fire. Like, can I upload the Thing ISO to its code, and it can go in and make it so I can get through the fire without cheating?
I don't know.
Rob, I guess given their suggestion, is there a historical setting that you really like? That, like the idea of like a strikers going like coal miners against the company thugs is a really wild setup. I can imagine different ones like that.
I don't know. I mean, like my go-to is like kind of places that are fascinating and complicated and to an extent kind of lost to us, and it would tread on like a lot of sensitivities and such, but like I've always sort of been fascinated by like the setting of like Ireland in the 1970s as the Troubles are getting rolling, where you have a sort of a powder keg going off and a really complicated both political landscape and then generally like physical landscape. Like, like Ireland becomes a place where there's effectively entirely different worlds, living cheek by jowl in a way that's almost like, oh God, what's the China Miéville novel, The City in the City? but like this whole notion of like there's just different realities that are like, you know, almost overlaid on top of each other has always kind of interested me. I think in a similar vein, the idea of like divided places, divided communities, you know, Cold War Berlin, and almost any point, you know, you can pick a year out of a hat. And I think it's just a fascinating dynamic setting that would be really cool to see some kind of game in. Although like the problem is, I think the nature of open world games is they become like Disneyland park tours of a setting, but like you still stop short of actually feeling like you're there, that it's like real in some ways, right? It's just more like you go through a painted set and then you go like, you know, talk to somebody, and it doesn't, I don't know, they struggle to make that stuff feel as vivid as say like Pentiment does, where like, you know, it takes a really small space, and just by having you make your rounds day by day, it becomes very very real to you, very concrete.
I feel like if you're thinking about it more as like just like what historical period I feel like could be interesting, honestly, the like, you know, South American like like the time where Bolivar was going around and like starting shit, you know, getting all the countries to rebel against the Spanish crown is a thing that I feel like it could make sense, right? Like in a lot of these, especially open world structures, that just never gets, I don't know, has never gotten the focus yet. So that might be cool. Might be, I say, because, you know, depending on the point of view of the people making it, you can get seriously different sort of takes on those revolutions and the governments that existed afterwards. So you know. Or how about we go even deeper and get into the CIA's like general just fucking about in South America shit. What if we can play as, you know, fucking Sandinistas and shit? I don't know. Something, I feel like it doesn't get, it's like, I don't know, maybe too real for people to talk about, which is funny. As far as like, because they're like, you know, they've made war games about fucking the Middle East and shit, and it's always bad, but they for some reason stay away from South America in that era. I guess because it's, I don't know, more revolutionary leaning than the era of like, oh, it's us against the narcos or whatever. Like, which is the thing that that's the only thing you kind of see, honestly, in that setting.
Well, and you're like ripped from the headlines war game can always sort of play a game is like, this isn't political, really. It's about like soldiers in the heat of combat. And to an extent, like you can sort of say like, you've delimited the scope of this to like, you're just a guy and you find yourself in the middle of this Middle Eastern country. Who knows how you got there? But like, holy shit, your position's being overrun. Get on that gun. And like, bam, bam, bam. That's, you know, that's the whole game. But the minute you are like, you introduce sort of the quieter moments, right? The whole like, okay, now it is... Actually, you see a country before the CIA like launches a coup, and you sort of see everything unfold. Yeah. Now it's like, ooh, this feels icky, and it probably does feel ickier, right? Because like soldier being like rushed by whatever the cause, like soldier in combat being rushed by people. It's like, okay, to an extent, like everyone's in a fight for their lives in the scenario. It's like, I guess it's, you know, video game fodder at that point,
right?
Wrestling with the context for violence like that.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's like, no, like think about this. Like, and then it's like, if you do that for the
I want them to think about
it's like,
this.
Is this like, well, is this soldier the good guy? He may not be the bad guy. Maybe he's just a dupe, but like what he is there to do, the army is not the good guy in this. And yeah, you take it to South America and boy, it'll get pretty grim, pretty fast. But yeah, I think that will do it for today's show. If you want more from Waypoint, you can follow us on Twitter at Waypoint, Facebook and YouTube, Waypoint Vice. You can follow me on Twitter at Rob Zachney. Kato, where can people follow you?
At @A_Kato_appears.
Patrick.
At Patrick Lovick.
You can also check out what we published on waypoint.vice.com. And hey, thanks to Waypoint Plus, we've been able to have a bunch of fun streams. You can check out Patrick going back to Breath of the Wild. You can check out Patrick just absolutely rinsing me in MLB The Show. And you can check out Kato and I absolutely probably rinsing one of our drivers in Motorsport Manager.
Who will make it? Who could say?
Yeah, there can only be one. Which driver will we choose to manage effectively in our next Motorsport Manager stream, which might be up as you are getting to this podcast, or might already be a VOD on twitch.tv/Waypoint. For our Waypoint Plus listeners, Patrick and I just recorded an episode on the opening of the baseball season with Jason Kebler talking about, is the designated hitter real? Is it a good rule? Is it terrible?
Boo,
talking about just the overall changes that have swept through baseball. Really, really fun episode. And it'll hit the main feed, I think, over the weekend. If that sounds good, or you just want more Waypoint, you can go to waypointplus.com and subscribe. Not only do you get access to our premium feed, but you're also helping support Waypoint and everything else we do here. Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. For now, we're calling time on this week. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, fuck capitalism, go home. And that's why we took that merch website offline, because we were like, we haven't fucked capitalism in a while.
No mention of zeal
now,
this
boom.
time. Nobody can have zeal today.
Zeal isn't something you can buy, Kato. That's just a lie capitalism tells you. But the that merch store is back up. Go check it out. But at the moment, I don't know.
I don't know.
Talk to you next week.
Wow, that Shazam movie came out 2 weeks ago, when it's going to be on video on demand tomorrow. Oh no, good for me though.
Is this the sequel?
Yeah,
the squeakle. You said Shazam, and for a second I was like, the Shaq move? No, that's
yeah. What was that one?
Kazam, right?
No, maybe.
Yeah, Kazam with a K.
Yeah, definitely saw that movie when I was a kid.
Yep.
Well, oh no, maybe I didn't see this one. What's the one where he's the superhero though? He's big steel, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. Right here.
I don't think I've seen that. I haven't even heard of that.
Heroes don't come any bigger.
Oh my god. What is this? Oh, he's much younger in that one. That must have been early. Wait, Kazam was... Why does he look so much younger in this poster? Kazam happened before Steel.
Yeah, I mean, this was like all during the era of can Shaq make the Hollywood transition?
Yeah.
Turns out, no.
No. I mean, he can't. It was funny. It was funny to watch, but...
Well, he's got to be in the right thing.
Yeah.
But, like, you can't...
Yeah.
You can't carry a movie. What other films have you been
I need to rewatch Kazam someday, because I remember enjoying that as a child.
Look.
I'm really curious how well
my turn can be whatever
oh my God.
You want it to be. And at some point we need to get off this. We're watching real movies. Like Rob got us close, right? Like
Right.
White House Down.
Yeah.
Stepping up to the line, but like someone could jump over it.
Right.
And it could be making us watch.
I unfortunately
Kazam.
had to bring us back, but
It's fine. But don't worry, that can be
look, I'm putting us in. I've moved us closer to the line again.
Mandy opens up a lot.
Yeah, because you got Nick Cage in there.
Nick Cage, like
Like-
there's a lot of directions you can go from Mandy.
I'm curious about Renfield. I just saw Bram's.
He has tried to downplay how much he's in the movie.
Interesting.
And also, I think the trailers have looked bad.
Nah.
I would watch a movie that is Nick Cage being Dracula.
Yeah.
But by all accounts, this movie is not that. It's about what the title says,
Renfield.
which is his assistant. But like, I don't.
What's his face?
That's not the movie I want to watch.
Sure. I just watched Bram Stoker's Dracula for the first time 3 weeks ago.
I've never seen it. Or at least I don't remember it.
It's good. It's a great film. Fucking wild visuals.
That's the one with Keanu Reeves is in that one too, right?
Yeah, he plays Renfield in that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it.
Kato, it looks to me like I might be clipping.
Yeah, you sounded a little boosted.
Yeah.
Not
I did
horribly.
bring you down.
It didn't sound bad enough to be actually clipping through Discord at least.
Yeah, it looked to me like it was clipping a bit. So I turned myself down.
Okay.
Still sound okay?
Yes. You
right.
sound a little more regular now.
All right. Let's do a quick 3, 2, 1 clap so we know when we came back in. 3, 2, 1. All right.